517 to scanner control. 517 to scanner control.
This is the Star Wars Squadrons podcast, episode 15. It's March 26th. I'm your host, Timebomb, and with me is the other host, Green Fox Leader. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Not too much. I feel like I said host really weird there. I don't know. It was odd. I really caught it.
Yeah. Nice.
With us this week, got a player from the team that just won the Cal Cup Winter Minor. They have had high placings all year. They're in the final for the SCL. Alex from Randolorians here. Welcome to the podcast, buddy.
Hi, thanks for having me, man.
Really glad to have you on. I feel like I'm a little behind. Is the SCL final scheduled yet?
I believe we have just messaged team to say Cheese to say we could do Thursday. So it's Friday or Thursday this week, potentially.
Oh, nice. That's exciting then.
Put a pin in it.
Yeah, I know.
Nice.
We were trying to talk into before. The schedule is, there is just so much so much competitive squadrons going on right now. The schedule is very busy. It must be tough to get that in.
It's been very hard, but we were trying to think of doing about last weekend, and then it's like no, and then this week it's just been all crazy, and then we can't do it this weekend because of our base, and then you just keep pushing it back and back and back. And it's like, when are you actually going to play SCL final, which has been one of the highlights of the year.
There was there was a moment there I was like, wait, Cheese and Rando are playing here. Will they just make the final? Both of them?
Yeah.
That would have been pretty wild. Obviously a little up there.
Cal Cup final and SCL final.
Two for double. Both on the line. So what is your flight game history before Squadrons? Were you playing flight games?
Personally, no, I've never really played flight games before. I am much more of a strategy guy, RTSs, and I think that is really what gets me going. I think, especially about Squadrons, is there's so much strategy. It's not just your flight; it's your strategy, your team, how you implement it. But yeah, I don't think I've ever played a flight game before. I mean, apart from Battlefront 2, Starfighter Assault, which was a meh flight game at that.
Yeah.
So what was your Star Wars gaming history then too there?
Oh, so many. Empire at War, when it first came out, however many years ago, 16 odd years ago or something like that, I can't even remember now. All the Battlefronts, the originals, the new ones, obviously all the Fallen Orders, all the Force Awakened. I loved the Force Awakened.
Aren't they bringing something back with that one too? I can't remember now.
I think so. I think I heard something like that. Well, there's a whole Lucasfilm new studios, isn't there? Whatever it's called.
I guess everything's kind of on the table now, and we're supposed to see a lot of new Star Wars games coming out.
Yes, I am hopeful for a lot of new Star Wars games.
So then, how did you find Star Wars Squadrons?
I think mainly from Eckhart's Ladder's YouTube videos.
Oh, okay.
I followed him a lot, and he did a lot of the pre-release, kind of content and covering it. And so a big part of that was, it just looked like a beautiful game. It's obviously Star Wars. Everyone loves Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then I just got into playing, and I loved it.
So how are you playing? Like, what are you playing? Keyboard or HOTAS or controller? How do you play?
I am controller, but I play on PC, but on controller.
Nice. Which controller are you using?
The Xbox One controller.
Oh yeah, just the standard. Nice.
Just the standard. Yeah, I've been thinking about getting an upgraded controller for a few extra buttons.
Yeah,
there's a few things I'd like to do.
Yeah,
I think Scout uses a scuff. I don't know. I think there's a lot of other, like a keyboard has a lot of advantages over the controller.
It does. Yes. With the boost drift bindings. Yeah.
The bindings. I use APM and I bind my buttons on my controller to my keyboard, so that I can actually use APM, which was a life changer for controller, because before I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, and I'm on controller but console, so I don't use the advanced either. I'm just on that basic life. What are so? I'm assuming would you and so your mappings anything unusual there?
No, it's literally just the D-pad maps to the buttons 7, 8, and 9. So, and then those buttons are mapped to maximize power instead of just change power.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah. Until okay.
a single button pressure is maximize. So it's like basic but with advanced.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Everyone uses it that way too. You're not, from what I understand, no one's really using the pips too much here or there. So
No, the pips transferring individual pips is not an effective way to fly at all. It takes way too much time to transfer fully. Especially with the very quick changes that you need to do to pull off some of these maneuvers that we're seeing. You need the instantaneous shift.
Yeah, and I guess having the back buttons is nice too. Like, I mean, I have, I can add in extra like shunting on the D-pad, which is nice, and I have like my second aux on like a back paddle, and then also just like power. I just have weapons and engines on the back underneath too, just so I don't have to actually move my thumb as much if I'm like throttling or whatever. I can just use those. So I don't know. It's nice just to have extra. It's good for extras, is basically what I think with having these buttons. But you can definitely get by with the standard.
You can get by. I mean, I seem to do all right.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, a lot of people do. Fenkar was using standard, like, you know what I mean. It's
anyone who says, "Oh, it's not viable," I'm just like, you're just bad. Then it's not the controller. It's just you. You need to get better.
I think there's less margin of error. Maybe, I don't know. That's the only thing I find with a. I mean, but I'm also on basic, so maybe that's where I'm getting the less margin of error from right there.
Yeah, some of the best pilots I know are on controller, so I don't think it's necessarily, like I said, the input. It's the user.
So it's my user error. I get you. I hear you loud and clear there.
Yeah, you're just bad. Obviously.
Yeah, fair. Hey, that's no secret. How did the Randolorians form? What do you know then about the backstory? Because I understand they came from before the game a little bit too, right?
Well, yeah. So I was one of the very first founding members. So we kind of formed. So when I started playing, I went into different Discords. You've got the official Star Wars Squadrons. You got Eckhart's Ladders Discord, those kind of bigger ones. And then I asked, are people looking for games? Started playing with people. Got invited to other servers. I was invited to Olympus Squadron Discord, and then I met a couple of the team there. And I think, who did I meet that are still in the team? Submo and Ziggy were there.
Yeah. And
then we kind of played against this team called SRW, who come from GSF, which is the flight game for Old Republic, I think it is the game. I can't remember. Ian's going to correct me. One of the oldest Star Wars games. And essentially, because obviously it was way back at the beginning, and we had a pretty good squad, like just pickups, all the time, but we were pretty good. We'd win most of our games. And then we played against Ian and his crew, and we just got smashed somehow. And we were like, what just happened? And I think it's, when the game first came out, everyone was just flying around shooting stuff, right? There was you didn't really attack a cruiser, or you didn't really attack an ISD. And then suddenly all these guys came out and they just destroyed shield gens in one go and power, and we were like, what the fuck just happened? What?
I totally remember those days. Like, honestly, earlier in the game, like that first month, like people just didn't know what they were doing. Even like it's just so funny, like how little we understood the game and how much more someone starting the game now has
100%
the info and the edge there. Sorry, go on. You're saying how everyone was just kind of flying around, but they had more of a strategy too.
Yeah, and so we decided, we wanted to. I mean, we saw all these teams on sort of Twitch that were going on, and we decided, we think, we're not too bad. We could give it a shot. So we asked this SRW group. We said, let's combine. Let's get an actual team going. And so we sort of formed a team. We started practicing, and then the name Randolorians came from when we played as a 5-stack, and we played against Avenger 1, and I think he had the Death Watch guys with him or something, and we just whipped their ass, and they just started losing. And Avenger 1 on stream was like, "What the hell's going on?"
Deathwatch was so dominant. They
So
understood.
dominant.
I mean, when the game was so PvP heavy, they were the best of the best PvP wise. It was so frustrating to play against them. So I mean, the fact that you guys could get objective work in against them is amazing at that point.
Yeah. And then he just said, "Who the hell were those guys?" And then he said, like, "Oh, are they just some like randoms, some like Randolorians?" And then we all just like, because we were still coming up for a team name, and we were like, "Randolorians, does everyone like that?" And everyone was like, "Yeah, I like that." And so the Randolorians were born.
Nice.
And then we picked up a few more players. So after the first op ace, Ian, one of our teams, played with Aces 5 squad because it was American only.
That's
in the
right.
First
Yeah,
op-ace,
yeah.
right?
It wasn't exactly. It was limited to American. Yes.
Yeah. So we couldn't form a team because we only had 3 Americans at the time, and me and Ziggy are both UK, so we couldn't put a team in. So Ian played with Aces 5. Well, it wasn't Aces 5. It was Devastator Squadron, I think, at the time. And so he played with Jester a lot, and Jester was just amazing. And so we kind of poached Jester, and then we poached a few other players. We poached Squid and
Yeah, why don't you give a
A1
shout out to all
Stormer.
list out all the players on Randolorians, because it is, you have a good squad, like it's deep.
Yeah, we
right?
have. I think there's 7 of us in the main team. So there's me, there's Submo, and there's Ziggy that come from Olympus Squadron days, and then there's Ian here, who SRW. So us 4 were 4 of the original 5. Then you got Jester, you got Squid, and you got A1, Avenger 1, who was the latest addition.
You think as the game goes on, we'll see more and more of that poaching from team to team?
I think occasionally. I don't know about individual players. I see a lot of teams sort of like mixing and merging, right? I see a lot of, I think RMT have just joined TRA or something.
Oh, interesting.
And so I think you'll see a lot of team merging. I think you'll get the occasional poach, or the occasional like drama, and someone leaves a team and then joins another team. And
I think what you'll see more and more is teams who have one player who's maybe above the skill level of the rest of their team. I could see those players moving on, right? Like, because at a certain point, like they're not at. I mean, the game's deep. There's a lot of competitive teams, but there's definitely like some players who could definitely go to other teams. I'm sure that get.
I think there is quite a few players that I think they're way better than their team, and I think, and it's obviously they're just friends and they're playing, and I think that's what a lot of people are. They want to play with friends, but they could be playing at a much higher competitive level.
Yeah, I mean it's a mix. A lot of teams form too, like when they're playing too, it can be a factor for building a team because you're always on at this time.
True. Like you, Timebomb, you're always on at like 3 a.m. and so you end up playing with a lot of Europeans, right?
I play with people in Moscow and Singapore and Europe. Although Duckling's on the team, he's weird too, like me. He's in Chicago, so we're a mix.
Yeah, we keep thinking like Orange. We're like, there's every time we're like, is the server's going to be good? Because sometimes there's a guy from Russia that hosts it, and we're like, are we going to have some lag this game or not?
I mean, I feel like it's always good though. It's because Gonk claims that Moscow is in Europe. I don't really agree with this theory, but apparently Moscow is in Europe.
Yeah, I think it is.
Technically, it's on a technicality. It is. We never let Singapore. We never let Phoenix host because he's in Singapore. Although that's our back pocket strategy. Just
just lag the other team out.
Yeah, put Phoenix in God mode for a game. I mean, it'll screw all of us too, but then Phoenix will just be just out there flying around.
Yeah.
No, we never.
Have you noticed very much lag issues, Alex, going from hosting a European server or a UK based server and then playing a bunch of Americans from the West Coast? Maybe there's some hit registry issues or anything?
Yeah, so normally we get East Coast servers because we kind of trying to ensure that we get East Coast servers, but occasionally I would play West Coast, or I'll play people in Australia or Japan. There's like a Japanese squad.
JPR
come against those
JPR
in ladder. Yeah, and
Toradaka and Bronco.
Yeah, honestly, sometimes I will like just get behind someone, I'll light them up and hit them 100 times, and their health will still be 100, and I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've played a lot of teams from all over the world, and I'm in Canada, and I don't have any issues with the exception, unfortunately, of JPRS and some Australian teams. That seems to be the area that's just difficult for everyone to connect to for whatever reason there. Unfortunately, so that I mean, I know that's why the Australian teams, that and the time zone issues, that's why they don't want to kind of come into the competitive events, because it's just the hassle of that.
It's a lot of hassle, and
and it's not good for them either. It sucks for both sides to have those connection issues. Yeah.
But yeah, no, like we occasionally have that lag. I think it was a lot worse at the very beginning of the game. I don't know whether they've actually patched it, but we had the shunt lag. Like every time you shunted, like it would just jerk your ship around totally, and you'd be thrown off completely. And that's why at the beginning I hated playing Empire, because obviously the benefit of Empire is you shunt and you can instantly get overcharged lasers. But then whenever I shunted, my aim was thrown off because lag, and I was like, oh, this is not fun.
So Phoenix, because he's in Singapore, he struggles with lag here and there. But what he's done is he knows to compensate now. He'll check, especially if we're on Empire. He'll use that shunt delay to figure out what his ping is, basically.
That's funny.
That's his little guy. He's like, oh, okay, that's about that. Okay, and that's how he leads more or less. So he claims. Anyway. Yeah. I find that so funny. I remember, we were lucky enough to get some scrim time against you guys too before the winter minor, and I remember earlier on, you guys weren't running a support for very long.
Yeah, we haven't. We only recently run a support. I think our whole idea was 3 objective focused players will put out more damage than 2 objective focused players and a support, right?
Yeah.
And we did some math on it, and obviously, whilst the mark is up, the 2 players are doing almost equal to the 3 players. But there's also the 30% extra from passive, which is a big thing. Passive is a huge amount of damage that comes in. So we were like, is there... So we tried to do math, and we kind of decided on actually that 3OJ was better for us than... Because we were doing the whole sort of torpedo conveyor belt type thing, right? So it was torpedo, torpedo, torpedo.
You guys had this way that you attacked that was in sequence and made it so difficult. This is early game too. I mean, this is December, January we're talking about too. And you guys just had this crazy attack that was so overwhelming. It
was, we did practice that attack a lot, the torpedo attack, where it was, okay, bang, 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 and it was, there was no break. It was, if you focus on one guy who's going out, you've got 2 guys that are coming in, and you can't. It's like, okay, do you try and chase the one guy down, or do you hit the 2 guys that are coming in doing torp runs?
Yeah.
And it's just constant this conveyor belt of here's a torpedo, here's a torpedo, here's a torpedo, and you can't stop it. And that only really got impacted when everyone suddenly started chaffing constantly all the time.
Yeah, I remember the chaff meta kind of hit mid-November, early December. Yeah. And everybody they were figured out you could push off missiles, push off torps with chaff. That's interesting.
Yes. That was a huge game changer at the time.
I think
Did you guys adapt to that and integrate it into your own strategies?
Yeah, we did. We initially, when the chaff meta came out, we had a player literally dedicated to each cruiser on defense, and he would just watch for incoming anything, and he would just sit and chaff. And that's what we had. We kind of changed it up a little bit. We sort of then changed, okay, instead of having 2 people, we had 1 person just do raider side. And we tried to implement it. We tried a rotating thing, but it gets very unwieldy very quickly. If everyone's trying to do other jobs, but also trying to chaff at frigate constantly, it gets very unwieldy.
I think, too, the other thing that kind of happened around that time is the torpedoes started glitching out in, December at some point. So kind of that, and then people kind of got wise to torpedoes, shooting them down, chaffing them glitching out. There was just a lot of reasons against them where people all kind of got away from it.
Yeah.
And then
Huge move away from torpedoes.
Yeah, and then when did you guys move into what did you move into next, and also did you start keeping a support all game at a certain point then?
So I think when we started implementing the support, we started with it only in the first phase, right? For the cloak, for the marks, and then it would dip out. And we then moved from essentially what the support would go in cloak and mark, and then he would go back, switch to a full ion build, so ion rockets, ion missile, ion lasers. Ooh. So the plan was we would win flip. The support would have already switched, he'd be on the field, and he would be responsible for all the shields on both cruisers. And then we just bring normal damage from whatever we fancy. If it was Empire, and at the time, if the Defenders was out, I can't remember when exactly the Defender came out, we'd either run maybe a Defender, a Bomber. We still did a lot of Torp fighters, just not the Ion Torp, because sort of, it's okay if your Proton Torp gets chaffed, for example. It's like, it's not great, but it's not like the end of the world, right? You can get damage from other stuff. Yeah. But if your Ion Torp gets chaffed, that means that's huge. Like,
totally, the attack is brought to a halt. And I mean, that's why we've seen, again, Ion Torps are like pretty much done. It's very, very rare to see the Ion Torps.
Yeah. So that was kind of our next step, was to switch to that, and then it was only a kind of maybe less than a month ago that we moved to a support full time. And that was when the meta sort of shifted from sort of max damage to least switches.
Right, and orbiting too, probably, because the TTK was so low, boost gasping. Yeah, exactly. So that was the whole. Which I kind of liked that. I don't know. I'm not sure. Right now, I'm thinking back to it. I kind of liked it. I'm not sure how I feel about the game right now. Exactly.
The game's been going through a lot of changes.
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot to think, and I think especially this. What happens with this whole meta of not switching is, now that they have nerfed the boost stuff, I think the Y-Wing is one of the things that struggles the most, which means the Y-Wing is almost unviable on offense now. Like, we've tried to make it work.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. Like, I mean, just when I'm flying it, and like, say you win the flip, okay, now you're in the Y-Wing.
Yeah,
you can go in, and that's take its time.
You can go in and die,
or you can take forever to switch. It's just like lose. But
whereas the TIE Bomber doesn't really have that problem. The TIE Bomber is perfectly viable on offense. It's incredible. It can put out so much damage. It can shunt. It can be so maneuverable so fast because of the boosting. Whereas the Y-Wing just doesn't have that. And then, let's say you don't be a TIE Bomber. Let's say you go back and switch to a Defender. A Defender's so fast anyway that you can almost make up for it by, insta boosting at 270 speed the whole way and not running out of boost ever. So, I mean, the non-switch meta has hurt the New Republic more than it's hurt the Empire, I think.
True.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and that's why we're seeing, like, for the most part, a lot. I mean, in any sort of balanced matchup, you're going to see a split between the Empire winning both sides. It is very difficult for even teams to win with New Republic.
That being said, we did get Cheese's ISD down to 1 health on the Nadiri game.
So close.
Literally one health.
Nadiri is a really good map for New Republic because I think that farms bound. Yeah. So is that what you talked about your strategy with it, Nadiri? Then
we picked Nadiri specifically for New Republic because obviously when you do Cal Cup and it's like a best of 3 or best of 5, you have to pick all the maps at the very beginning, right? And so you don't know. I mean, you can guess that, okay, we're Empire first. We're probably going to win Empire first, which means they're going to pick Empire, so we're going to be New Republic. So it's like, okay, what maps do we want on New Republic? We thought Nadiri. That means farm is slow. Everyone knows farm is awful on Nadiri, which means that the fact that you have to go back in your Y-Wing and switch to an X-Wing means that it's sort of negated because you're not losing morale that quick, right? In other maps like Nadiri, by the time you've gone back and you're there, you've lost half morale. Whereas on Nadiri, you've only lost, say, 9 morale, which is manageable. Like, you can get in, you can do X-Wing stuff. And then you're sort of then relying on more player kills to get morale, right? And we find we are very good pilots. We don't die that much. I mean, obviously there are games where everyone just has a bad game and dies a lot, but in general, if you look at our SCL stats, we had least deaths in SCL completely, like huge margin.
I will say, for what motives seem to want to increase or decrease the time to kill, there was way more kills in this this last one than previous ones, right?
It was nice. Avenger 1 and Jester did a great job this Cal Cup. They got a lot of kills between them. And I think a map like Nadiri plays to our strength of we have 2 players who can do a lot of kills. And that means, if those can disrupt the farmers, if they can kill the farmers over and over again, we can extend our offenses. And I think New Republic needs long offenses to be able to win, and so that was our whole strategy.
Oh yeah, we had the misfortune of playing you guys with New Republic on Nadiri. I think it was terrible. Jester and A1 did an amazing job just focusing our farmers and me on support. I got worked really hard. It sucked.
It's pretty rough being we always do sort of internal sort of like dogfights and stuff just to keep us on our own toes. And whenever I'm on the other team against them, it's always very rough. I'm always not enjoying it.
Oh yeah, that was one thing too I noticed in the finals, which I thought was kind of funny because you guys too were in sort of some situations where you didn't have support out there. You're using more 5,
So I think mainly because of the most recent patch, right? The support mask was nerfed to 7 seconds activation and 28-second cooldown, so it's gone from a 50% uptime to a 25% uptime. The marks had a slight nerf of 5 seconds. I don't think that really affects anything. Obviously it's worse, but it's not significantly. But also, the boost activation cost hurts the support a lot as well, because the support relies on boost to live. The support cannot live without boost because it's such a huge target, right? And anyone can hit it if you're not boosting.
I mean, I literally trained on all that boost gasping orbit stuff for like a couple weeks, and then they nerfed it, and I was like, oh great.
And so it means if the support wants to keep doing that boost gasping, it has to do a lot longer drifts to recharge its boost, which makes it a lot more vulnerable. So our support player was like, I'm not really feeling as effective in the support as I did post this patch, right, or pre this patch. Like, before this patch, he could essentially orbit a cruiser forever, putting out masks every 10 seconds or 20 seconds.
Oh man, my deaths went up I went from averaging 3 deaths to 4 deaths now. It's just gone up like crazy in the last 2 weeks almost now. Yeah, it's been rough. Been rough out there for support ships, that's for sure.
And so we kind of sort of changed back to our old sort of style of play where we said, okay, 3 OBJs and we just hit hard. Especially with the sort of no switching on Empire, but you kind of have to switch on New Republic, is if we get an extra OBJ, that means that the time to switch, you do have all that time to switch, but once you have switched, it's so much more damage coming in.
Yes. Also, just thinking about it too, because Cheese is a really good farming team too. So having, you can just get more damage in a shorter amount of time if they are getting. So it totally makes sense. That plays to, it's a good strategy against them.
And we did bring back torps against them. I think, especially on Nadiri, we chose Nadiri, also very split cruisers, right?
Yeah.
Total opposite sides of the map. You can't cover both. You have to choose one or the other, right? And so that means we have a Nadiri strat where essentially our 2 dogfighters just go around one cruiser and they try and soak up all the attention, and all the 3 OBJs just go to the other one. And with New Republic, get some nice reflect runs, you're not even spotted. You can get in a whole bunch of damage before anyone even notices. And then by the time they notice, it takes them a whole time to react, get over. And that time, maybe you're out resupplying your cruiser, right? And it's very hard for them to react on Nadiri. And that was our whole idea going into it.
And I mean, I will say too, I'm saying, Empire has the balance. It was right up until did you guys lose? Wait, no, until maybe. Trying to think, did you guys You won with New Republic up until Gas. Maybe was the first time you guys lost.
Yeah,
yeah.
We lost. Well, we lost one on the first day to Imperial Guard, but that's when we should have out of phased, but we didn't. So Ian and I are the two sort of in-game leader shot callers, essentially.
Yeah.
So I was the in-game leader for that day, because Ian wasn't around, and I said go for the out of phase. But I think 2 or 3 teammates said no, I don't think we should. I think we can defend. We had one shield gen up, but it was like really low health, and it was a full health MC, but with a low shield gen. And I just, in my mind, I knew, I was like, we cannot defend this. We have to go for the out of phase.
It's in, yeah.
Their ISD was on 18 health, and I was like, we can out of phase it, but we just didn't. But yeah, that was so we could have won that game.
What do you
that was the first game.
What do you think's the maximum to out of phase?
Well, in our game on Cheese, against Cheese on Nadiri, it was 40 health when we started the out of phase, and we got it down to 1.
Oh.
So it's possible. At the end, essentially, so our whole strategy now for flagship attacks, like, previously, I think very sort of early on in meta, it was shield gen, power instantly, 3-3, like 1-2-3. Now we are shield gen, hull damage. Okay, phase is about to flip, now power. Or ISD is down to 50% health, and now power. So
there you go.
Now you've hit power, 5 weak spots open up, and you've already done loads of hull damage. So you've got 5 brand new weak spots, which you haven't touched. So that's the instant boost of hull damage you can get. Which means, say you're very close to losing a phase, you can pop that, get all the crit spots before you lose phase and win. Or you lose phase and you've got 3 or 4 crit spots that you can get for out of phase. And that's what we had, is we popped power very at the end, and we saw in like a death cam 3 crit spots at the bottom, and we're like, okay, everyone underneath ISD, there's 3 crit spots. Out of phase, go for it. 1 health. We didn't quite do it.
Oh, man. That's the way it goes. I mean, yeah, that's the game. You gotta go for those out of phases, right? Like, I feel like those games where I didn't go for out of phases or we weren't able to finish them, like they stick in my mind so much more than any win or whatever. Like, you're just like, I was right there.
Literally, it's like 1 burst laser shot, right? 1 concussion.
It's anything.
Anything. And that sticks in your mind so much, you're like, we could, like, literally anything.
You could go in with ions and maybe ion lasers and get it done. It's like,
do you guys find yourselves preferring Empire these days? I mean, looking at the recent Cal Cup stats, it was something like out of 40 games, the last ones, it was like 22 Empire wins and 18 New Republic wins. So it didn't seem like at a high level they were that far away, but Empire still just feels like it's got that slight,
I think so it has the edge where TIE Bomber is far better than Y-Wing.
Just all around as a bomber?
All around, because shunting is so strong. You can instantly shunt to lasers, and that means you can either shoot a player a load, or, for example, for killing the Raider or the Corvette, the TIE Bomber is so much better at killing the Corvette than a Y-Wing. And then also, sort of not just a ship, but the Defender exists. So the Defender has ion missile, which means it can boost up very quickly to a Y-Wing. A Y-Wing has no chance of escaping a Defender. Ion missiles a Y-Wing, and the Y-Wing loses half its health instantly in the shields. Whereas a TIE Bomber, if it gets ioned, doesn't lose any health. Obviously it's disabled, but it hasn't lost half its health, which the Y-Wing does. Which means the Y-Wing gets deleted a lot quicker than a TIE Bomber when it gets disabled.
They needed to not, like, blanket apply the nerfs on the last one. They needed to do, like, the X-Wing, like, if they did it 100%, they needed, like, 50% of that, and the Y-Wing, like, I don't know, nothing in my eyes, maybe 10%.
Yeah, I don't think the Y-Wing really needed anything. I think it needed love more than anything.
Support, it needs, exactly, yeah. The Y-Wing has gotten no love all year, seriously.
I don't think it's ever got a buff. I can't remember ever having a Y-Wing buff.
I don't think so. I can't remember it if they did.
And it's been bad since day one, really.
Like people have made, like, said that those things, but then, like, all this B-Wings, there's been other things that have just overshadowed it, so they've never, like, gotten to it or never cared enough. It's funny. It is almost hilarious at this point. Also, support chips too. They didn't need to. I mean, they got hit. They could have done like 25% maybe instead of whatever they did, and then. Yeah, I mean, the Empire was. It's fair though. I mean, those nerfs were good for the Empire, and
100%. I also think the fact that the Defender exists. So when a New Republic is going on offense, so you have TIE bombers farming, and you have defenders doing dogfighting or other things, which means your dogfighters have to choose between, do you want to go after defenders or do you want to go after bombers, which is two totally different loadouts, right? Like, you cannot kill a bomber if you have ion lasers, and you cannot kill a defender if you don't have ion lasers. We can, but it's a lot harder, right?
Well, that's what you see, Imperial Guard, like you're talking about them taking a game from me. They've got a really strong support player, right? Like Narcissus, it's someone like that who can add this extra layer, or
a team plays support in a very different way to every other support.
It's
really.
So true, and Liven on Hut. They had Hut is such a good team. They got such a bum deal in the tournament just because they had such a tough path, and they it's tough. So those type of support players can add another element, I think, too.
Yes, it's so obviously the TTK is so high because people are so maneuverable, like so bouncy. Whereas when you tractor beam someone, suddenly they can't move, they're dead. And so that's why I think we do struggle occasionally against IG, because we described it as they have a very disruptive play style, right? Watching them, they don't do that much objective quickly. Like, I think if they optimized and they did a lot more objective, they could be a lot better in terms of improving their own game. But the way they play it disrupts your game. Like, if you're playing against them, suddenly your whole plan is thrown out the window because the person that you wanted to do X has just been tractor beamed to dead, so he can't do it.
Yeah, and what you're saying, you kind of have to pick this one or that one who you're going to go. I think so. A support like that can let them one go one way, the other one go the other way, and then the support can kind of cut down the middle. They can help. They can tractor beam the defender. Someone else can that way. Whereas, but still, four defenders, there's nothing you can do because you need someone farming. So you're 4-on-4, and you basically need two people to take out each defender. So that's the problem right now. I see. Well,
that's also another reason why we chose Nadiri is so the farm is terrible in Nadiri. So, for example, a Y-wing can take ICT. It doesn't really affect the farm because normally a farm is Goliath and multi-locks, right? But you never really get a pack of 5 to get a good Goliath on. You only get 2 AI at a time. Or 3 maybe if you're lucky. So it's okay, you take the ICT, you take the multi-locks, and you just use your lasers. So you multi-lock and lasers, and you can use ICT to apply that extra pressure to defenders, which means it makes your dogfighter's job a lot easier.
Do you think standard lasers in the Y-wing?
I use rotary.
Okay. Someone said that to me on Reddit, and I shouldn't believe what I read on Reddit. Okay, go ahead.
So I mean, I think so. The only reason for standards is because of there's no charge up time, there's no wind up time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The maneuverability hurts a little bit, but not that much because the Y-wing's already not very maneuverable. So it's what's 30% of 10? It's not much, It's
yeah, I hear you.
But honestly, you should be using the spool up trick where you can spool up and you can keep it almost firing quite a bit, right? If you think so, that's how you should be using a rotary. Which essentially almost negates the
maneuverability hit, basically, and the time, the one,
the wind up time, and the rotary is just so much more DPS.
Exactly,
that you can just apply to, especially like a Corvette, if you're trying to burn it, or a player that suddenly just gets in your line, you can just rotary them down so easily. I do think the rotary is far better than standards on.
Yeah,
on a TIE bomb though, there's no question.
Yeah, that's what Y-wing. I guess is a question. It seemed crazy to me. I was like, really? I was like, standards, gross. I think that was my initial response.
I think rotary. I mean, obviously, I see people use standards, and I don't think there's enough of a penalty for the rotary to make it not the go-to.
Yeah. I think where else would you like to see the game go in the next little bit? What would you like to see then for further? We kind of talked about the Y-wing. Anything else, and maybe nerf to defender.
Yeah, I think before this latest patch, I think the Defender was in an okay place because every other ship was on an equal sort of footing because they'd nerfed the Defender down to other levels, but then they nerfed everything else. So now the Defender's back up, right?
Oh yeah, I knew as soon as I saw that patch, I was like, this is dumb. I was like, they just buffed the Defender.
So I think what the first Defender patch was, like, they touched the Defender a little, but mostly that patch was a boost mechanic patch, right? It was the boost extension, not the boost activation, and it was those sort of things. So I think what they were doing was they were testing the sort of the nerfs to the boost gasping mechanics on the Defender because the Defender was the biggest offender of that, right? So I think they were testing that and then they were implementing it to everything. So I think that's what they were aiming to do.
Yeah,
and then
it just hit the every other ship so much harder.
Other ship harder than like a Y-wing because everything charges very slowly on a Y-wing compared to a Defender, and it has so little maneuverability that boost is its life. Same with the support, right? Boost is its life because it's such a big thing.
And there's people boost gasping too with the Y-wing like at the point, like people were really efficient with it.
Yeah,
or could be.
You can do it quite well in the Y-wing. It's a lot harder now.
Could anyway, yeah, could was the operative word there.
You can still just about do it, but not very well.
Well, I mean, I can't do it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I struggle. Where else would I like to see? I mean, I think the Y-wing and the B-wing need love. I was talking to Pseudo9 actually, and he said, "Oh, the B-wing, like you laugh, but one of the biggest things the New Republic lack is damage, and the B-wing can output a lot of damage."
I've been playing the B-wing, not in any sort of serious game really, but I mean, it's better than I give it credit for. I'm liking it a little bit even. It's just
it's not viable at high level. Unfortunately.
It's not, unfortunately. It's a one-way trip. I mean, even if you're pocketed almost, like, it's pretty ridiculous.
I mean, did you see the SCL game that Remnant did against us in Zapian? That was, we were like, what is going on here?
I mean, that we actually messed around to it, but we didn't do it with 2 supports. That's, I think, what really unlocked its potential there.
I mean, obviously that strat now is no longer viable because of the support mask nerf.
Right, yeah, it's so everything ends. There it is.
Everything ends there now, but it was a very cool strategy.
Yeah, I guess even with 2 people, it wouldn't be enough time to make it work out right.
No, yeah, you'd need 4 supports to get 100% uptime, which means there's only 1 B-wing, which is not worth it.
Yeah, 4 support, 1 B-wing. That's the wild new meta.
Yeah.
We saw a little bit of B-wings in that high level play. I remember on Cal Cup Day, somebody pulled out 3 B-wings or 4 B-wings or something.
Oh, Cheese did it against us in the last game. They had lost. They thought they had lost already. You can see B-wings occasionally. I feel like the B-wing comes out when people think they've already won or lost, and so it doesn't really matter.
I mean, like the huge DPS, like the output of DPS from like those proton bombs and stuff, like it's
huge.
It's huge. I mean, you hit all 10, it's like 10k.
Yeah, it's 11,000 damage, which is, if a B-wing gets into an ISD, it's, I don't know how, it's like 12% of the hull or something like that. I can't quite remember. 15%.
Yeah, so like I remember like when we messed around, 2 people doing it, you could both get it down to 80. So in theory, if you did, 5 runs with the 2 B-wings, right? Like, it's done.
This is the thing, is there's so many positives that you're like, oh yes, it's so much damage, let's go. And then you're just like, okay, but how do you actually get it in? And
true.
You can't get it in. You can't get the B-wing there against any good players. I think our team
from point A to point B, right?
Yeah, exactly. If we see a B-wing, we all say, "Oh, B-wing, B-wing," and we're like cheering, like easy kill, free kill, let's go.
That was nice of them.
Because Gas pulled it out against us. They do a very interesting thing when they defend the MC-75, is they pull out B-wings to try and kill the Raider as quick as possible.
That's right. Yeah, they actually talked about that on the podcast. That strategy they didn't even get to pull out, but they did, I guess. There,
they did the double B-wing. Double beam B-wing, so ion beam and mean beam, and it kills a Raider very, very quickly. But we saw it in our game against Gas is Avenger 1 and Jess just killed that B-Wing as soon as they got close to it. The B-Wing had ripped the shields apart of the Raider and done a lot of damage, but then it was dead. And so at that point, is it worth coming out in a B-Wing if you're just going to die? Like, surely an X-Wing is better because you're not going to die. Like, it takes 5 seconds to kill a B-Wing. It takes 30 seconds to kill a good X-Wing player.
True. Well, I think some of those risk-reward situations are part of what makes Squadrons interesting. Because, there's a couple of different ways you can get to the objective. And, yeah, I don't know. But you're right. It's kind of like you end up trading whatever, good defense for good offense and vice versa. So sometimes it's kind of a draw.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think the thing is the B-Wing trades morale for DPS, whereas other ships don't.
Yeah. -5 morale plus
Exactly.
plus 11,000 DPS. There's the trade. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add before here? Any shoutouts you'd like to give?
Don't think so. Thank you guys for having me. Thanks to Cal Cup for organising great events. We'll be there in the next major. We'll be there on OpAce this weekend coming up.
And the SCL finals, man. Tons
and the
of
SCL
stuff.
finals. Hopefully that will happen next Thursday or Friday. We're looking at. I'm not 100% sure.
We'll all keep our eyes out for that stuff, man. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Green Fox, man. Anything else you'd like to add out in here before we wrap up?
Yeah, man. Just thanks for stopping by, talking to us a bit. It's always good to hear from some top level players about what's going on out there in the out in the world. And I think that's it.
All right. Well, thanks again for being on the pod, Alex. And good luck in everything coming up. And for everyone out there, thanks for checking out the pod. Give it a subscribe, a like, give it a review on iTunes, all that stuff. And we'll check you out next time on the Star Wars Squadron podcast.
Scanner control.